Welcome to Cheat Sheet Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late. Now, let's get into today's tale. I gave Mom $20,000 monthly for her business. My cousins snickered behind my back and said I was a pathetic ATM. Mom told me to stay in my lane in front of everyone. I cried in my car and got a text that made me swerve. My dad passed away when I was 28, a heart attack in his sleep. He'd always been our rock. He ran a modest auto repair shop. Never made a ton, but we never went without. After he died, Mom went through what I thought was grief, but what I now recognize as reinvention. She didn't want to sit around and mourn. She wanted to build something beautiful. "I've always loved antiques," she said over dinner one night, and coffee. "Can you imagine a space with chandeliers and the smell of cinnamon and espresso? Like a Parisian bookshop, but cozy and American." She looked at me with those eyes that still had mascara smudged from crying earlier that day. It could be our second act. Honey, yours and mine. And just like that, she sold me on a dream. I was doing well in my tech career. No kids, no major, financial obligations. So when she said she needed help getting the store off the ground, I helped. First a few thousand, then tens of thousands. At some point, it turned into a regular monthly transfer, $20,000 every month. I never saw financial reports, never asked for them. Seriously, she'd brush off the question with that laugh. "Darling, you in spreadsheets? I can barely work the register, but we're doing okay. Things are tight, though." She said things were always tight. Years passed. The shop, brews and relics, was quaint, Instagram-worthy. It had loyal customers, mostly retirees and college students looking for a quiet corner to study. I'd visit once in a while, not as often as I should have. And then, at family gatherings, I started hearing it. My cousin Jasper leaning over a drink to whisper, "Must be nice being her little piggy bank." Felicia giggling behind me when I mentioned a vacation I canceled due to work. Maybe Mara is afraid her ATM card will bounce. They didn't think I heard, but I did. And when I told my mom about it, expecting her to be angry on my behalf, she said, "Well, you do give a lot of money, sweetheart. Maybe they're just worried." Worried? They'd never lifted a finger to help her. Or me. Jasper still lived off his girlfriend's income. Felicia had been launching a lifestyle brand for years, which I later discovered meant she was posting product quotes on Instagram and hoping to go viral. Still, I let it go because Mom was family and I believed she loved me. Until the anniversary. Dinner. She threw a lavish garden party for the shop's 10-year milestone. Fairy lights, live jazz trio, custom menus. Everyone was there. Cousins, distant aunts, even her church friends. I came early, brought a bottle of wine from Napa, helped set up folding chairs. Toward the end of dinner, I approached her gently, away from most of the crowd. "Have you thought about getting a business accountant involved, just to help with cash flow?" I could. She raised her voice. "Mara, please stay in your lane. This isn't your business to run." It wasn't just the words, it was how she said them. Loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, like I was a nosy stranger sticking my nose where it didn't belong. Jasper actually clapped. Felicia pretended to cough, but I could see the grin on her face. I left. Didn't even finish dessert. Got into my car. Sat there shaking. Angry, embarrassed, heartbroken. That's when Naomi texted, "Look at this link. Your mom selling the business. Craigslist listing, $350,000. I opened the listing. There it was. Turnkey antique cafe for sale in Evanston. Fully furnished. Loyal customer base. Owner retiring. I couldn't believe it. Not a word to me. Not a single conversation. I called Naomi. My hands were shaking so badly I accidentally hit the gas while shifting into drive and nearly swerved into a mailbox. I had to pull over and breathe for 5 full minutes. She picked it up and confirmed it. I found it while browsing furniture listings. She's not just selling a couch. She's selling everything. She's getting out. But what gutted me wasn't the betrayal. It was how little she thought of telling me. After all those years, after every check I wrote, after every call to my financial advisor asking if I could squeeze just a little more this month. The next day I called her. She didn't answer. The following week, I stopped the transfers. No more monthly deposits. My bank account suddenly felt less like a sieve. Days passed. Then the voicemail came. I hope this isn't you being petty. I have obligations, Mara. And this is no time to start acting like a selfish child. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Selfish. After 6 years of unreciprocated financial loyalty, that's when I knew it was time to stop being quiet. I reached out to Uncle Louis, my dad's older brother, a retired CPA now living in Neepville. He always had a no-nonsense way about him. Growing up, I'd feared his directness. Now I crave it. He reviewed everything, my bank statements, emails, text confirmations from Mom. He didn't say much at first, just sat back, glasses low on his nose, and hummed thoughtfully. Finally, he said, Mara, this is bad. Not illegal per se, but unethical. Absolutely. We talked about options, legal, financial, reputational, and that's when he said, if you can't get your money back, you can tell your story. Sometimes the truth is the best tool you've got. So I wrote a Yelp review, then a Google one. Honest, factual, devoid of rage. I wrote that I was her daughter, that I funded the shop entirely. I learned she was selling it without my knowledge, that she never shared financials, and now was trying to cash out quietly. Within a few days, the post spread. Former employees reached out. Some said they hadn't been paid for weeks before quitting. One claimed Mom promised her a bonus once the shop sold, which meant she was definitely planning the exit. And then a journalist from the Chicago Tribune emailed me. The journalist's name was Dana Valente. She specialized in small business features and consumer rights issues. Nothing sensationalist. Her work was always clear-eyed and grounded, which is why I even considered talking to her. She'd read the reviews I posted and said she was working on a story about family dynamics and financial abuse, not to sensationalize, but to inform. At first, I ignored the email. I didn't want my family dragged into the press. But then I remembered how easily my mom had turned my silence into her cover. After 3 days, I responded. We met at a quiet cafe in Logan Square, closer to her office than mine. She bought the coffee. I brought a folder with bank statements, wire transfer confirmations, and printed screenshots of texts from my mom that referenced helping with the business. Dana took notes quietly, occasionally asking clarifying questions. At one point, she looked up and asked, "Did she ever thank you, even once?" I couldn't answer right away. I had to think about it, which said everything. "No," I finally whispered. "Not once." She nodded and scribbled something down. That's incredibly common. The piece took about 3 weeks to publish. I didn't tell anyone in the family I had spoken with a journalist. I didn't feel like I owed them that much. When the story dropped in the Tribune Sunday business section, the headline read, "The Daughter Who Bankrolled the Dream, When Family and Finance Collide." The article didn't name my mother directly, but locals connected the dots quickly. Dana had been careful, respectful, but the facts were there. A daughter funded a business for nearly a decade with no contract and was shut out when it came time for payout. The emotional, financial, and psychological toll were laid bare. The fallout came fast. I started getting emails from old classmates, old coworkers, even distant cousins I barely remembered. Some were supportive, some were cautiously curious. A few were outright indignant, asking why I'd exposed the family like that. But you know what surprised me the most? how quiet my mother got. For the first time in months, I didn't get a single call, voicemail, or cryptic text laced with guilt or passive aggression. It was as if she'd evaporated, until I got the email. It wasn't long, just 3 sentences. I saw what you did. Hope you're proud. This is who you've become. No apology, no recognition, just spite cloaked in disappointment. And for the first time since all of this began, I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. I realized she'd never truly seen me as an equal. I wasn't a partner in her dream. I was a vessel, a resource, an extension of her will. I didn't reply. The shop closed 3 weeks after the article. I passed it one rainy evening on the way back from dinner with a friend. The windows were dark. The little open sign that used to glow with charm was gone. Empty chairs were stacked on. Tables and the front counter had a handwritten note taped to it. Thank you for 10 wonderful years closed permanently. I stood outside for a while, umbrella in hand, staring through the glass. It didn't feel triumphant, just sad, hollow. She could have had so much more. Not just money, but legacy, gratitude, a relationship with a daughter who would have moved mountains for her. Instead, she cashed in. I didn't know where she was now. Scottsdale, maybe. She'd talked about Arizona when I visited once, and said the dry air helped her knees. Or maybe she was staying with Jasper or Felicia, though I doubted either of them would offer a dime of support. And as for them, their smug little comments stopped after the article. In fact, Felicia deleted her Instagram for a while. Jasper posted something vague about family drama and fake narratives, but quickly went quiet after a few people commented, asking, "Is this about Mara's story?" I never confronted them directly. I didn't need to. The truth had already spoken louder than anything I could have said. In the weeks that followed, I started taking stock of everything else I'd neglected in the process. My apartment was quiet, too quiet. The plants by the windowsill were dying. I hadn't painted in over a year, something I used to do when I had more mental space. I took time off work, just a few weeks. Told my boss I needed to recalibrate. She understood. And during that break, I started writing again. Not for the public, just for myself. Journaling what had happened. How I'd escalated, how I ignored. The signs and why it helped not to forgive her, but to see myself more clearly. Then one morning I got another message. This one from a former barista at Brews and Relics. Her name was Natalie. She was 23, just out of college. She found me through LinkedIn of all places. Hi Mara, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I just wanted to say thank you. I worked at the shop for 6 months and had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. I just thought your mom was quirky and forgetful. But your article helped me realize how important it is to advocate for yourself, even when it's uncomfortable. So thank you for that. I stared at the message for a long time. There was no bitterness in it, just clarity. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of healing. Not with my mom, but with myself. I stared at Natalie's message, letting it settle in the quiet of my apartment. It wasn't much, just a thank you. But it felt like a vindication I hadn't known I needed. Not everyone thought I was cruel or vindictive. Not everyone believed I had ruined the family. Some understood. Some even admired what I'd done. And over the next few weeks, something inside me shifted. The grief was still there, a sort of dull ache that came in waves. But the shame, the deep, buried feeling of being manipulated and unappreciated, began to evaporate. I started cleaning out old drawers, sorting through receipts, photos, even some cards my mother had sent me over the years. Most were generic happy birthday, with a few rushed lines about how proud she was, but none ever referenced the business. None thanked me for keeping it afloat. In one envelope, I found a photo. It was from the shop's opening day. My mom is standing next to the Brews and Relics sign, holding a pair of golden scissors. I was standing behind her, mostly cropped out, half smiling. It hit me then. I was never meant to be part of the picture. Not really. I was just the scaffolding she climbed to reach her dream. So I started building something of my own. I reached back out to Dana, the journalist, and asked her if she knew of any small business networking groups or nonprofits that helped women, entrepreneurs. She sent me a list. Once an out, I found her a Chicago-based mentorship program for women who had been financially exploited in business partnerships or family ventures. I joined, a little hesitant at first, but the women I met were incredible, diverse, honest, wounded but fiercely determined to move forward. Some had similar stories. Parents who'd drained their trust funds, siblings who'd taken out loans in their names, spouses who'd run up secret debts. Everyone was tired of staying quiet. That's when the idea struck me. What if I started a support circle for people like me? Not therapy, not legal aid, just a space, virtual or in person, for daughters and sons who had become their parents' financial crutch. I called it Dollars and Daughters. Naomi helped with the branding. She was a wizard with design. We launched it quietly, just a Facebook group and a basic site with resources, links to financial literacy tools, and space for people to share their stories anonymously if they wanted. The response was immediate. Within 2 months, we had over 1,000 members. Within 4, it was 5,000. A few lawyers even joined to answer questions pro bono. Someone from NPR reached out for a podcast interview, then The Atlantic. And suddenly, I wasn't just Mara, the ATM daughter. I was Mara, the woman who turned betrayal into a movement. Meanwhile, Mom's silence had turned into mild background noise. Occasionally, she'd send a text, always indirect. Just saw the Tribune use your quote again. You must be thrilled. Or you know your father would be ashamed of how you've handled this. But the irony. I didn't think Dad would be ashamed at all. Fact, I think he'd be quietly proud because he always taught me to protect what mattered, even if it meant making hard choices. He protected her for years, and I tried to do the same, until it became clear she didn't want protection. She wanted control. The satisfying part came slowly, not with a single slam-dunk revenge moment, but with a series of small, quiet wins. After the article, Mom had trouble finding a buyer for the shop. Her public image in Evanston took a hit. Word spread. The cafe community is small. Loyal customers stopped showing up. Not out of malice, but because no one wanted to support someone who had taken so much from her own daughter and offered nothing in return. When she finally did sell, it was for half of her asking price, and she had to leave behind most of the furniture and inventory. The new owners gutted the place, renamed it, and turned it into a cozy plant-themed tea shop. Naomi and I visited once. The matcha latte was fantastic. Felicia and Jasper, without their ringleader, floundered. I heard Felicia started a GoFundMe to pivot her brand after she got called out online for mocking a disabled influencer. Jasper got into day trading and apparently lost $40,000 in a single week. They blocked me everywhere, which was honestly a gift. One afternoon, about a year after everything unraveled, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address, but the looping cursive gave her away. Mara, I hope someday you'll realize the damage you've done. Families aren't built on public shaming. They're built on forgiveness. What you did was cruel. I'll never understand why. Your mother, Celeste, didn't respond, but I placed the letter in a folder titled, Why I'll Never Go Back. That same week, Dollars and Daughters got its nonprofit certification. We applied for grants. A local law firm offered free legal templates for children investing in family businesses, contracts, co-ownership agreements, even exit clauses. I made sure my story was used as a case study. At our first in-person conference in Chicago, I gave a talk. I stood at the podium in front of over 300 attendees and said, "Love isn't a blank check, and family doesn't mean silence. You have the right to ask questions. You have the right to say no. You have the right to protect your peace." The room erupted in applause. I spotted Natalie in the third row, beaming. Naomi cried. "And me?" I smiled, not because I had one, but because I had finally stopped losing, finally stopped